introduction and forgot to start. Oh,
That's
Olga started
okay.
the recording. Thank you, Olga, for the starting the recording. So we'll go ahead and kick it off to Denise. Thank you so much, Denise.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining today. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, I'll pull this away. Yeah, so I have been with MiTek a little more than 30 years, and I currently senior technical support manager with the home builder software, and a lot of different roles and different experiences, and MiTek's been a great company to work for. I do live near our Chesterfield office in Sunset Hills, Missouri, so not too far away, but I think I recognize a lot of names and faces on the call here today, so that you may already know that. But my presentation is about igniting change and connecting with empathy. We'll talk a little bit about creating good habits and caring for yourself and how that can really help to empower leadership in yourself and in others, and connection and belonging for others. And so a lot of the content I talk about really comes from the wisdom of others. These are just things that really struck me. And so I kind of put it together, but I hope it's helpful to you too, and really a good use of your time. And there'll be plenty of time for questions or discussion, and then we'll probably end, 15 minutes or so before the top of the hour, so that you can take a break and get to your next women's session. Let's see. And also on the last slide, or one of the last slides, I have all of the reference to materials that I quote today. And so I'll drop the slide deck in there, so that if you want to get to the books or the presentations that I talk about, it'll be easy to do. So our women's conference has 3 themes. And if you're watching the slideshow, you may have seen those themes kind of go through. And so they play off of our design, make, build MiTek's strategy. And so today I thought I would talk about some practical things under each theme. And the first one is, it's called Design Lead Hers, encouraging women to take charge of their lives, embrace leadership qualities, and craft a future that reflects their true aspiration. And this is an inclusive conference, so it's not just for women, but that's just the theme. But when I think about crafting a future that really reflects my true aspirations, I think about a time when I created a vision statement. And you might have a really clear picture about what's important to you and where you see yourself as you kind of take this life journey, but you may need to take some time to create a vision statement. Because before we can really ignite change, we need a vision of what we want, maybe who we are, where we see ourselves as, and having a vision statement really stands as a concrete expression of your desired results. It allows you to dismiss distractions and really provide that clear pathway for success. And when I started dating my now husband, Kirk, I recognized that he had a really clear vision for his career and his life. And there was really a stark contrast for me. I was feeling a little unsure about what was really important to me for the future. I mean, I had a lot of strong convictions, but there had been a lot of difficult transitions and losses in my life. And, then I had this new relationship, which is great, but I kind of felt like I was just swinging in the wind. So I decided to just Google create a life vision and start doing some of the exercises that really hone down what's important to me. And sometimes some of those things are like, write down strengths that you have, write down, the top 10 character traits that you think are important, or, write down what things that you like to do and enjoy to do. So over the next few months, I just kind of kept a running list of what made that top priority. And I ended up with a life vision. I'll show you on the next slide. And I just want to say up front, it's nothing earth shattering. It's just a personal thing, but it just really helped me. And it just put some parameters around what my focus would be in my career and in my personal life and for my future. So it's because, as Seneca states, there's no favorable wind for the sailor who doesn't know where to go. This life vision speaks to my career, faith, and relationships. I will. And then you could see in the next couple bullet points, like things that ended up making that list, pursuing wisdom or continuous improvement, inspiring people, encouraging resilience and staying true to my faith and my loved ones and running the best at the end. And just those were some things that I put together, and it just really helps me. I think it can kind of give you meaning and purpose in what you're doing, but it's also sort of a clarifying tool in your life. You have a choice of using your time and your energy and your resources on a lot of stuff. So what really best aligns with your vision for your life? If something doesn't match up, you can focus on something else. So if you have a big life vision, you might think, okay, how on earth am I going to get there? And anytime I'm faced with a big problem and I'm tempted to become overwhelmed, there's a way that I make it easier for myself. And I kind of just think, what do I need to do to get started? Or what's the next step? Or what's the first step? And so, like anything else in my life, this didn't come from me, but I heard a quote from a book by Charlie Mackesy, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And in that book, it's kind of a book, a little bit like parables and just wisdom and things like that. But in that book, they were in a dense forest, and the boy was becoming confused and overwhelmed. And he says, I can't see a way through. And the horse said to the little boy, can you see your next step? And the boy said, yes. And the horse said, just take that. And, I think it's amazing because if you just keep moving, just take that next step. As a little bit of time passes, you can kind of look back maybe 6 months down the road and go, wow, I've really come far. And so I use this kind of step-by-step process, just about everything now, in my career, maybe goals to start a new hobby or personal goals. And, I think that one of the key things besides just taking the next step is actually making sure to keep moving, don't stop. And like, for example, let's say at work, we want to develop a new process and there's maybe an introductory meeting to kind of gather the people together, get the thoughts, after that meeting happens. So that's a step. Then, maybe there's some action items that I volunteered for, or maybe putting the next meeting on the calendar. And I'll just make sure at least I do that, And so sometimes it seems like things take a long time, but again, if you just keep moving, you end up making quite a bit of progress. So, and then also thinking about, with a vision and maybe some of the things in your vision might have you create some new habits or some better habits. And, you may need to change some things. So I read this book and I really loved it, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And, I felt like, I'd done a pretty good job of developing habits through the years, but he really provided a lot of detail on the subject with a lot of research to back it up and made it helpful. And, I think it's true if you're wanting to create some good habits or break bad ones, but I think it was really helpful, even if you're pretty good at it. And so one of the things that the research showed was establishing effective habits really ties back into that vision or that identity a whole lot. And if you believe you're like a gym goer or an athletic person or a runner, you're much more likely to develop habits that reinforce that. So, this also kind of goes for habits you want to stop. So let's say a person wants to quit smoking and they're offered a cigarette. And, this doesn't really happen too much anymore, but saying, no, thanks, I'm trying to quit versus no, thanks, I don't smoke actually has a really powerful difference because the second statement shows they identify with being a non-smoker. And the author says that, really the most effective way to change your habits is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. And the reason that our habits are so powerful is not that they can get you better results, which they can, but because they can change your beliefs about yourself. And the book explains the science and a lot of the examples behind a particular feedback loop that will help your subconscious brain to just create effective habits. And, I wish I had more time in this session to cover more than just a tiny fraction of this content, but I'll tease you with the 4 steps and encourage you to get the book. James Clear suggests, his research suggests that the four steps are make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And so like one example of something, a habit I've created in my life, just a little thing, was I wanted to drink more water when I wake up. And I'd heard that, your body's really dehydrated. You should drink a big cup of water when you wake up, and that's good for you. And so I made it obvious by stacking the habit just before I got my first cup of coffee. So every day, one of the first things I do is pour a cup of coffee. So before I do that, I fill up a cup with maybe 24 to 30 ounces of water. And it's attractive because I know I get coffee after I'm done drinking the water. And I also kind of look out the kitchen window at the trees and the sunrise. And it's easy because the cup's right there by the sink. And the water I use from the sink isn't that cold, which is easier to drink and just to guzzle down. And it's satisfying because I make a point to recognize how much better I feel and how much more awake I feel just a minute or two after drinking the water. Like it really quickly, you can just tell a difference in your body. And so that's just a little example. But when I read the book, I think the last step really stood out to me because sort of the whole premise of creating a habit is to take it from being a conscious act to making it so natural that your subconscious just kind of runs the show. And so, thinking about like, have you ever fallen out of the habit of doing something? I mean, maybe you were doing so well, you're going to the gym 3 times a week, but then something disrupts you and you just kind of fall out of the habit. And I kind of think the key to preventing that problem is that fourth step, make it satisfying. So I think when we get to, that part, maybe after the workout, when we're feeling amazing, we've got the feel good hormones, we really actually have to make a conscious effort to tell ourselves, wow, I feel great. This is amazing. I can't miss my workout next time because I'll miss feeling this good. Just really kind of talk yourself into like how satisfying this is and make that really apparent. And I think this has really helped me stay consistent. But it is something in the loop that can't really be delegated to the subconscious. It's like you have to be present to recognize the satisfaction in it. So anyway, that was just something I thought was pretty cool about the learnings I had. The next the second theme out of 3 for our women's conference is to make connections. And, there's connections of different relationships and good connections with people. And, for me, I actually think, good connections with others might start with connecting to myself. And so, I try to connect to my feelings and emotions and stay present. And there's a really good podcast that I'll advertise called The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos. And she's a Yale professor, and she's done a tremendous amount of research on well-being and happiness. And I've really learned a lot. But at one point, she did a little video where she talked about a meditative practice called RAIN. And she did not develop this meditation, but she just, I don't know, when I heard it, it struck me. And this is something that you can use whenever you have an emotion that pops up. Maybe something sudden or something you normally just kind of ignore and push through. And I usually practice it when it's a difficult emotion like anger or frustration or sadness, but I think you could use it to, affirm positive ones too. But RAIN is really an acronym and stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And, so maybe an example, like you feel sad, take a minute without judging yourself and just recognize, maybe say out loud, I feel sad. And then allow yourself a time to feel that emotion, maybe just a minute or so, and investigate, like, how does sadness make me feel physically? Does my chest feel heavy? Does my face feel pressure? How do I physically feel the sadness? And then finally, nurture. If you were comforting your best friend for, they're sad, what would you say? How would you encourage them? And you should really kind of be that best friend to yourself and encourage yourself. And, I'll tell you a little story about like this happened to me probably just about a month ago. And I practiced jujitsu and I was at a competition training, and that's a really taxing workout. It's like 2 hours, which is a lot longer than I like to work out. And there's a lot of cardio training. And we also drill with partners and practice as if we're competing. So not only was I physically exhausted, but I felt defeated too, because I kept getting dominated and submitted by ladies who were like lower ranking belts than me. And even though this is definitely not uncommon, that day I just felt discouraged. And that evening I felt sad. And I tried going through this meditative process. And when I got to the nurturing part, I told myself, hey, it's great. I'm working hard. I'm learning. At least I'm putting myself out there, And I thought I did an okay job of nurturing myself. But the next day, I trained again, like the next morning, and there's this white belt guy who's a really nice guy. He's strong, he's young, he's a police officer. He's just always kind and encouraging. And anyway, we were talking, and after the roll, I was saying something like, well, I was trying to get myself out of a bad situation, and I was trying to explain it. I kind of started tearing up because I just was so frustrated about, letting myself get in bad spots and stuff. And he just launched into like a 3-minute speech, which I ended up having just to interrupt him and say, thanks, Z, but anyway, and he just kept saying, oh, you're showing up, you're doing the work, you're consistent. And he went on and on. It was just super kind. And he was so encouraging. And I realized, wow, he was a lot better friend to me than I was to myself. And I need to do better. So use your imagination. If you need to encourage your friend, what would you really say, and be that friend to yourself. So anyway, then there's also, obviously an element of connecting to others. And I watched a little video, it's linked here, but Brene Brown, it's just a clip from a talk that she did. And she says that empathy fuels connection, and that's the key to connection. And, she talks about a study done about, 4 qualities or keys to empathy. And one is like perspective taking, and really being able to take the perspective of the other person and coming at it in a non-judgmental way, which may be really difficult to do. Recognizing the emotion in that person and then communicating that back to them. And, she discusses how really empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I might have to touch painful parts of my life. And, maybe I have to imagine a situation that I really haven't experienced. So that can be really hard to do. And many times with a good heart, we try to make things better by saying, at least, and trying to put a silver lining on it. And I know our keynote speaker yesterday talked a little bit about like toxic positivity. And so anyway, that's rarely going to really make a connection and really help that person. Even if you have some good advice, maybe, it's not the time for it. But, you might just say, that sounds really difficult. And I don't even know what to say right now, but I'm just glad you told me. And so, sometimes that advice won't really make that step forward, but that connection that you made with empathy will actually help them. So that leads us to our third theme, build belonging. And in a world that seems sometimes fragmented, creating a sense of belonging is a powerful act, and call it to cultivate an inclusive environment. And, we aim to dismantle barriers and build bridges that connect us all. And this is a really big part of our 2024 conference theme, learning how to build belonging, care and show love, break down barriers, allow connection. And, thinking about this, I'm like, realistically, we live in a world, though, that a lot of people don't want to make the effort to make others feel like they belong or that they're included. Most likely you've encountered people who do just the opposite. They make people feel excluded or like they're not enough. And, but how should we respond to this? Because we really can't control other people. We can only control our response. And, it's like, what's the healthiest perspective to have when we're a victim? Maybe, we're a victim of unfair, cruel, and even criminal treatment. But, sometimes, you know, as you're working through the healing and getting through that, sometimes helping other people could be part of the healing process and, turning the tables that way. And there's a book I read called Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. And there's a chapter in there that talks about Mr. Rogers, Mr. Fred Rogers. And I don't know if there's folks on here from the international element of MiTek. This may just be a United States show, but I watched a lot of episodes when I was a kid to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And he really exemplifies the concept of building belonging. He was really focused on helping and teaching specifically children with like any number of things, basic things, but also really difficult subjects. But as a child, when he went to, elementary school in Latrobe Elementary School in Pennsylvania, he'd been a victim of bullying over his weight, and people knew how sensitive he was. They mocked him endlessly, and it was really a horrible experience for him. But he talks about how the pain really spurred his groundbreaking work in public television. And he says, I began a lifelong search for what is essential, what it is about my neighbor that doesn't meet the eye. And so the episodes to the show, gave that message of like, slow down, be considerate, be aware. And that's what Mr. Rogers, taught children to do. And like all the episodes, there's something, some topic, and it could be something like self-worth or making crayons, or maybe it was divorce or topics on race or topics on having fun. But he would walk his young viewers through what was really happening and what it meant. And he just seemed to naturally know how to relate and how a kid's mind might process information. And he would help clear up understandable confusion about subjects. And he taught empathy and critical reasoning skills and reassured his viewers that they could figure out just about anything if they took the time to work through it together. And so I love this example of creating belonging and how he took a history of being made to feel that he didn't belong. And then he ended up turning that around and helping a lot of other people. And so I would say, believe in yourself. You are enough. You do belong. You are valued. And, we've talked a lot about imposter syndrome, in the presentation yesterday and also in other women's meetings, and we've heard, fake it till you make it for imposter syndrome. And I heard a TEDx with that title, but Harvard professor and speaker, Dr. Amy Cuddy, who had done this TEDx talk, she has done a lot of studies around confidence and the impact of hormones on how you perceive yourself and also how others perceive you. I think she's the one that came up with that Superman pose. And before you do a presentation like this or an interview, but anyway, her TEDx talk is amazing. But she talks about how it's really not fake it till you make it. It's really fake it until you become it. And she tells a story about when she was 19 years old and she was in a car accident. And she had really, a strong part of her identity was that she was smart. And that was a really important thing to her. But after several rolls in the car, she was thrown out of the car and she ended up waking up in a head trauma rehab unit. And she was told that her IQ had dropped 2 standard deviations, and she was withdrawn from college, and she was told that college wasn't going to be something that she should pursue. And Amy said that she kept trying and working and got lucky and worked harder. And she eventually graduated from college, taking about 4 years longer than her peers. And she convinced her advisor to kind of take her on, and her advisor had actually found a place for her in grad school at Princeton. And she said, I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. I am an imposter. And her first assignment was to give a talk. And she was so terrified that she called her advisor and said, I'm quitting. And that advisor said, no, you are not quitting. I took a gamble to get you here. You're going to do it and do it and do it. You're going to be terrified, but you're going to keep doing every talk you're asked to do until one day you realize you're really doing it. You realize that you have become this. So she did that, and she did every talk. And after 5 years of grad school, she became a professor at Harvard. And she had her first year of teaching, and towards that end of the first year, she really hadn't thought about how she was faking it. But a student of hers who hadn't been participating in class, even though she had made it very clear to the class, if you don't participate in this class, you will fail. And so this student came into her office, and she said she didn't know the student, but she came in and she was totally defeated. And she said, look, I'm really not supposed to be here. And Amy gets emotional when she's telling the story, and she says it was a pivotal moment because she realized two things. One was that she didn't really feel like that anymore. And two, she understood how that and she understood how that student was feeling. And the second thing was that Amy actually realized the student is supposed to be here. She can fake it. She can become it. And Amy encouraged that student and said, you are going to go into class tomorrow and you are going to fake it and you're going to give the best comment ever. And she did. And the next day she came in and she gave the best comment ever. And other students turned around and were like surprised to hear her speak. And she went back to Amy a few months later, and she realized that she didn't just fake it until she made it, but she had become it and she had changed. So I thought that was really inspiring. But I hope for all of us that we encourage belonging for others and that we make people feel welcome and accepted. And, if, maybe not if, but when you find yourself in an environment that's not accepting, not making you feel like you belong, that you believe in yourself, have confidence that you are right where you should be. You're part of the conversation, part of the solution. And if you keep that up, you'll someday find yourself knowing that you are enough, you do belong, and it doesn't matter what others portray. And so in conclusion, for the design, make, build, design your leadership, form a vision, with each step, keep moving, build those good habits, make connections, connect with yourself and the RAIN meditative practice, and connect with others with empathy, and build belonging. Give your pain a purpose, like Mr. Rogers did for so many people. Fake your confidence in your own belonging until you truly believe that you actually do belong, because I know you do. And the last slide here is just those references that we have. And, that's really it for me. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, or, if maybe someone has an example of, habits in their life, or, just anything that I might have said that, that you could build on to, that would be great too. So anyway, thank you guys.
I really liked the RAIN meditation example.
Yeah,
Because I've absorbed pieces of that, but it never really occurred to me to put it together in a flow.
yeah,
Yeah, so that was I think one key piece that stood out for me is something to take away and put into practice.
yeah. And it really doesn't have to take that long, maybe 10 minutes, but sometimes it's like, you're going about, you're doing fine, and then all of a sudden you're really angry or you're really frustrated, and it's kind of like, okay, maybe just take 10 minutes, just kind of think about what's happening, and sometimes if you do that, you can kind of get through that emotion a little bit faster than if you just kind of ignore it and it kind of builds upon itself. But great, thanks, Miranda. Anybody else? Well, let's see. I probably should have come up with a couple questions, but you know, I don't know. I don't know. I hope that everybody continues to enjoy the women's things. I've gone to several of them this morning, and it's been really good. So anyway, appreciate everybody's participation.
I will put in the chat a link to our next event, which is all around sustainable construction and let's see here. How can sustainable construction make a house a home and a neighborhood a community, which I think is a perfect segue after our Mr. Rogers neighborhood example from Denise. So if there are, if no one else has anything they'd like to add or any questions for Denise, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and I hope to see you in a little under half an hour for our next session.
Yeah, sounds good. And I'll drop that presentation in there in case anybody wants to click on those links and see the videos. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks.
Thank you.